the YouTube. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, Alain.
Hi.
Welcome to this webinar, and I'd like to thank you for joining us. We're going to spend 1 hour today focused on the topic of how can we increase or keep the engagement of our teams in these times of pandemic. So what I like to do in the beginning is to let's say contract and agree a little bit on how we work together and let's say align on that. So the first thing I would do is, shall we introduce ourselves, Alain?
Or rapidly. I mean, okay, I can go. My name's Alain Cardon, and I'm a coach, MCC, a coach trainer. I work a lot in France and Romania and a lot of other places, very often online, like, I don't know, Buenos Aires and so on. And I've been in the training and consulting and coaching field since 1979. Which makes me an old fogey.
Okay, yeah, good. So let me say also a few words about myself, because I know from what I see, some of the participants know us in a way. Either we've been working together as friend or as clients. My name is Manolescu. I'm a business coach, a systemic coach, and also a facilitator. And I'm working, when it's like 14 years ago, I started coaching, and I'm working with teams and with senior managers and executives, coaching them. Some of you I know are here in the audience, and thank you for being here. But I'm also working with international teams, being part of the Human Invest company in Romania or Chem Blanchard company worldwide. And we're here together to, let's say, facilitate learning in a way. Although it's a webinar, and I like to give a few, let's say, considerations and give you a few guidelines about how to work on this seminar. As you see, it's an online seminar that is running through a live streaming, and to really handle all the pressure, we decided that we have a live chat, so you can feel free to chat, say hello or comment on the right hand side of your screen. This is one thing that I want to say. You can log in with your real name, with your guest name, or with your fantasy name if you like. But we'd like to ask you, if you have any question related to the topics we're going to talk about, to type in the chat your question there. Now, technically, if it happens to you, depending on the connection on the internet, that for the stream to freeze, reload the page. You will be brought to the same page, and then you can watch it. Now, the second thing I want to say is we're going to record this webinar. So in case you lose it or you're in a way you can't watch it, there will be an option later on for you to watch it, but I will let you know about that a little bit later. And in terms of the, let's say, conversation today, we have three big topics. This is what we're thinking, 3 ways to keep your team engaged. So one is about the systemic coaching, and we're going to cover that right away and say, what is this? The second will be, because I know many of you are managers and you're managing teams. How do you manage, and how does the remote work impacted your team? And then what can you do? What are some options that we can offer from our perspective as systemic coaches? And the third one would be, if you want to develop a coaching culture, or you want to become, a manager that it also has a mindset and a skill set of a coach, what can you do? How can you do this? How can you approach it?
Can I add a few things? I mean, on the contract concerning us, in a way, the way we're working is a conference style, and we can say it's like an educational style. It's as if you were all in an amphitheater and we'll all be the only one speaking, and you're receiving end. So what we're doing is in coaching, and the format in a way is one-way communication. So basically, the idea is we give you our frame of reference and what we're thinking about, what we think of systems and whatever. So it's a kind of one-way discussion. It's to show you our frame of reference and show you what we do, or rather, we're not going to show you. We're going to tell you and things like this. So it's interesting to have questions on your part. But obviously, this is our frame of reference. You can have a completely different one and so on. That's your affair. But the idea here is we tell you about us. So it's kind of a one-way thing. So it's a bad illustration of what remote work together. So in a way, we're doing the opposite of what needs to be done. But this is a conference, okay? So it's rather different.
Yeah. But I mean, Alain, I wanted to ask you, because we discussed about this one. How can we start with an example? What would be an example about, before getting into systemic coaching? Because this is something that we both share.
What is systemic?
Yeah. So,
okay, we can probably you can say a few things that are more descriptive, but I love to get messages across with a picture. And one picture I often use, which illustrates also that coaching comes from sports, is kind of a sports situation with a basketball team. If they're not very good, and I want them to become much better, as a sports instructor, coach, I would have the 5 people out of the team on the court and get them practice, or maybe more, but a team is 5, and practice. So and give them instructions. So the first instruction, for example, is pass the ball to each other in less than half a second. If you hold it more than half a second, you're off the court. So be really fast. And I'll have them do this for hours until it becomes completely natural. Of course, it's not natural. It's based on practice. And then I'll make it more complex by saying, don't pass it to the same person twice in a row. As a matter of fact, don't pass it to the same person until you have passed it to all the others. So that adds complexity in the practice, and they have to do it faster and faster and faster, not more than half a second in your hands. And then when they become of a good enough level, I'll say, okay, continue doing this, but by moving around and then by running around. And this can take weeks and weeks and weeks and months, so they get to high level of proficiency. This illustrates that actually I'm working on the interface between them. In other words, passing the ball is passing the resources and passing the resources and so on. Yeah. And it's based on practice. Then if I put them in a game, they'll probably win 10 times more games. Yeah. So working on the system is working on the interface between the people, so they become much more professional, and that will increase results. So it's interface to increase results. Now, in a way, I don't care about their relationships. I don't care if they kiss each other on the mouth, if they drink beer after the game, etc. They are not there to be friends. They're there to kick ass. So that makes, in a way, team coaching completely different from most approaches. Yeah. We don't work on relationships to improve results. We work on results, and the result is going to be that they will respect each other more, they'll challenge each other more, and they'll probably retire together and have excellent relationships as a result of their developed professionalism. Mm-hmm. So the frame of reference is very, very specific. That's important. It illustrates team instruction in sports, but we do it in a coaching way, which is different.
Yeah. I mean, this is linked in a way also with what is happening in companies, because in a company, people mostly work in teams. So in a way, if you look at the team dimension and the team definition, something that sometimes I had conversations about was exactly this idea that you pinpointed. What should be more important, the energy and the motivation of a team, or the relations, or the performance? What is like what comes first? What should be the focus? And I myself notice again that if you focus too much on the relational side, you tend to lose the performance side.
Yeah, and you develop complacency. In other
Yeah,
words, everybody will avoid problems to save the relationship. So
yeah,
it becomes
yeah,
a superficial relationship
yeah.
that doesn't develop results. If you really develop results, the relationships that develop are deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
basically, to develop relationships, the best strategy is to focus on results first.
Yeah.
In other words, it's not either or, but as a strategy to develop lasting relationships, you need to develop results. And we see it. I mean, when a football team has excellent results, there's no relational problems. So the day they become losers,
Yeah,
you have it all over the papers on jealousies and
yeah,
this and that,
yeah.
and that means they're going down the drain. Relational issues uh, are what losers do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
whenever some people say we have relational issues, I know they're losers, and I know the strategy is to get them to become winners first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Now, if we think of systemic, what can we say? What is different or unique in the systemic coaching? If we would put some, let's say, some words or some keywords that are separating or making it unique from the coaching field in general, in what we do. So, if you would, highlight several ideas on that. And I'd like to ask you also, because you came with this. I mean, you studied and you were actually initiating that. And I know there are not so many systemic schools, coaching schools, and systemic coaches in the world. Uh,
Well, there's more and more, but I was basically working with a systemic approach when I was a consultant. And
yeah,
I think my first writings on it were in the 80s, 85.
yeah,
I was basically integrating, family therapy approaches and other systemic approaches into how I worked with teams.
yeah,
Now, my first focus actually is I started recognizing patterns.
yeah,
And so systems have patterns. It's like I don't know, individuals have patterns, and teams have patterns. So and they're all good and bad. Basically, patterns
uh-huh.
are patterns. It's like having I don't know, in a computer you have what do you call it, OS.
Yeah.
If you don't have an
Operating.
OS, I don't know the use of the computer. So your patterns are good patterns. You use them. Now they all have bugs also, and you may misuse them, and so on and so forth. So the first step is recognize the pattern. Second is accept it
Yeah.
and use its full potential. And then the third is maybe tweak some areas where you have bugs, and then try to evolve it, of
Mm-hmm.
course, to more performing patterns. So
Yeah.
coaching is pattern recognition, and then pattern tweaking in a way.
Right. Yeah.
Now it's with the team; they need to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
You're not there to impose, a perfect pattern. There's no such thing. The perfect pattern is the team's pattern.
Yeah. Actually, this is one, let's say, reaction that I've seen from some managers that I was working with, and that means there is a difference between their need to push for results or to pull the team into one direction,
Mm.
and actually expressing this in a form like, how can I drive for results or how can I motivate my team, which it's a rather a hierarchical top-down approach, and it's actually not creating and not unleashing the power of the team and then the motivation of a team. And I'm thinking, from this point of view, how is systemic coaching helping on that? For example, a manager, because I know myself as a coach, how is it different for me when I'm focusing on a pattern with a client and helping them figure it out and work with this, rather than tiny problem solving on details there. Now on a team, this might complicate the idea or not. Some people might say, well, but I have 10, 12 people.
Mm.
So, as a manager, is there one thing that, and I'd like to ask you this, that one manager can be aware of, pay attention, so they can spot the patterns and perhaps work in a more collaborative way with their team?
Well, In a coaching response, I mean,
Yeah,
there's two things. If you have newcomers, beginners, in a way, you need to have an instructor. So,
yeah,
in the beginning, you learn how to play tennis. You need an instructor,
right,
But if you're dealing with champions or somebody who's really advanced, you're not going to teach, I don't know, Samhas or whoever, how to play tennis and what
right,
style he should have. You're going to help him actually find out his own style and pull his own style in his own way. So you're going to become more of an accompanying coach.
yeah,
If you keep dealing with a performing system by giving instruction, you're actually limiting its potential to develop in its own
yeah,
way because it will be limited to your way of thinking.
mhm,
And actually, the idea is in a conversation between 10 people, in a dialogue, in a
yeah,
real dialogue between 10, you get much more than out of instructions from one.
yeah,
Uh, okay, so
yeah,
there could be a phase where sort of bring models. It's more instruction. It's less coaching, and then there needs to be a phase where you actually accompany the team that does the work, and you never step on the court, and you never give instructions.
mhm,
You challenge
yeah,
the way they're doing their patterns so that they think about them and develop others. So that becomes real coaching.
mhm,
But with the
mhm,
beginning team, I would say the manager needs to give instructions.
right,
Uh,
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
and in a way, coming to today's situation, for instance, what people call remotely is, I like the word because it says at a distance. It's not the
yeah,
problem. The situation is actually distributed teams.
yeah,
In other words,
mhm,
you're not on location, you're distributed. But saying it's remote is like saying it's a problem.
yeah, like far away.
How can you be completely together in a distributed way? It's a network team.
Yeah,
So it's useful first to put the thing in a positive way and then to say, is there instructions? And then how to develop the conversation so that they build themselves and their patterns in a very performing way.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. This is what I noticed, and it's interesting how, if we look at the meaning of the words, like saying remote work, which seems far away and like you're in the other end of the world, but actually you are there. And I think this crisis and what happened in the last months, in a way, shifted in a fifth gear or sixth gear the activity of some teams. I mean, I had a lot of conversations with managers sharing with me either, oh my god, I'm scared and I don't know how to manage it, or we were so break working at a breakneck speed actually, and we're actually doing a lot that we would never thought of.
yeah.
But the biggest idea that I was hearing was, I'm seeing that teams are more and more, autonomous and horizontal, and I discovered that with delegated, with distributed, and they don't need me anymore.
Yes.
you know,
Now, it's true that the need for managers is becoming different. In other words, the old style managers that were quite seductive with their hierarchy
yeah,
and the whole withholding information and controlling and so on are being gradually phased out by the
yeah,
new system. And what is being recognized is excellent team members that help everybody organize, the chair, and that do much more of a peer relationship type of co-organization. They usually emerge from the team.
yeah,
They're extremely effective, and they are appearing as those that should have been promoted rather than the political ones. Um, and today there's quite a lot of studies about this, about
yeah,
what new leadership is emerging from teams, sometimes from the workers, and they're usually working managers because they're also doing and helping other people to do and so on.
yeah,
And it's much more a sort of collective entrepreneurship
yeah,
that is emerging rather than top-down control.
yeah, yeah,
So I would say the old managers have a good reason to be scared unless they
yeah,
shift gears too very
yeah,
quickly. They
yeah,
better learn fast.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember we wwe were discussing, I think 10 years ago or even more on that, and we were discussing about the future of leadership, which means collective leadership. not individual. And it was even before the previous crisis. Yes, I remember that. And actually, I think this is the moment. It's for collective. It's not for individual. And it
Yeah,
was an outside force or an outside event that came and put pressure.
yeah,
Now, what I think is the first need is to be able to work with the collective brain of your people, and this is actually the fundamental belief of coaching, which
yeah,
is believing that clients are smart, they are intelligent,
yeah,
they can figure out solutions, and they need the appropriate space.
yeah.
The-
Well, in a way, coaching is creating the space for your client to
yeah,
grow, and today's management is creating the space for your team to grow.
yeah,
Uh, so, modern age manager, I mean, COVID manager, it should
yeah,
have been before, but COVID is
yeah,
accelerating, is actually needs to rest on coaching skills. Management skills today need to be close to coaching skills.
mhm,
They're the same because you
yeah,
need to know how to create the environment for others to grow
yeah,
collectively or individually.
yeah. It is in a way I would say like a manager coach. Uh,
Yeah, well, that's what we talk about. Yeah,
Yeah, this is an idea. I mean, I'm not sure if this
yeah.
is the right name for it, a manager or coach, but I do believe that it is in a way having a mindset
Yeah, well,
and the
it's the
skill
new
set.
manager coach. In other
Yeah.
words, if you say it's the old manager that's controlling, very often going into details, micromanaging, etc. Today, we could say actually there's the means for workers to measure themselves and improve themselves and share together without management. I mean, technical means. So there's no need, for micromanagement because if everybody can measure their progress, they usually progress by themselves and they challenge each other and so on. So there's, we've been talking about flat organizations for the longest time, and it's happening more and more. Now, it doesn't mean management is not necessary, but it does mean a way to coach these people forward becomes useful, and why not done by managers?
Hmm. Hmm. Now, I'd like to ask you something, Alain. That it's a conversation I had with some of my clients. I don't know if some of them are present today. Here, guys, we also have that. And this is about the coaching culture, which is it's a general term, a generous term about defining how managers or how employees in a company are thinking and behaving. And I'd like to ask you, from your point of view, how do you see this coaching culture in a company, and what's actually practical? If you take it to the practical side, what does it mean for you, from your point of view?
Well, there we get into a paradox because, I mean, we say coaching doesn't influence the type of solution, doesn't drive in a certain way, doesn't, the client decides and the coach accompanies and so on. It is true to a certain point, but it's completely paradoxical. And because coaching does rest on some fundamental beliefs and principles, which is in a way, we accompany people towards developing their autonomy and their responsibility and their individual results and collective results
Mm-hmm.
and so on. So it rests on a number of white Anglo-Saxon, Protestant beliefs.
Yeah.
If you go to an African tribe and say individual responsibility, they'll laugh at you and say we're all collectively responsible for each other, and whatever one does influences the whole tribe, and the whole tribe becomes in debt because of a person.
Yeah.
So there's no such thing, So coaching, brings a culture. Now, what culture? And in a way, for me, coaching emerged in the 90s and was about 10 years old at 2000. So it's totally millennial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's not a psychological heritage. It's not an industrial heritage. And that's what people say when coaching is not consulting or expertise. In other words, it's not industrial and it's not psychology. In other words, it's not humanist psychology. It's not Freudian psychology. It's not Jungian. It's not MBTI and this and that.
Yeah.
It is network oriented. Just do it now. Action oriented. It's not analytical, so there's a lot of philosophical dimensions in
Mm-hmm.
coaching.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we do accept any kind of client and any kind of goal, so long as it fits into the coaching philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and you better fit in the coaching philosophy, or else we'll say I can't do that, or
Yeah.
fake it or whatever. Now, it's a good thing in a way because the world is evolving post 2000 and now post 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 9/11, and we'll talk about 2020 in the same way. I think
Yeah.
it is a turning point, an acceleration point that is bringing 20-year-old millennials, or now they're 30 actually, but the turn of the century now is 20 years old, and it means we need to get into adulthood. No more pissing around, and it needs to get into that new culture fast.
Yeah. Alain, I will just want to jump in here with also looking on the chat here. We have 3 interesting comments. One is from Nelu saying, are there any external materials, book we can recommend to better understand, study systemic coaching? And I think we can do that by suggesting a little bit later some books on resources on that. Then I see a comment from Mihaela saying that is it more about empower employees and make sure that they have all the digital techniques in place, speed up their digital transformation and automate more. So I'm not sure if this is a question, but maybe it's a comment. And the question we have here from Elena is the following: what stopped old style manager to be a manager coach until now, and why has this become vital?
Well, I'll take the last one. What stopped actually is nothing stopped, but what was reinforced is if I had an excellent salesman in a team and I wanted to pay him more and keep him, I'd promote him manager. So as a result, I had one good salesman less and one, untrained manager more. Because the salesman who promoted to management firmly believed he was the best, and he would show everybody how to sell and take their place and take the best clients and, get involved in all the sales and do micromanagement because he would rest his management on his expertise.
Right.
So today, if we have a good, IT person in a team, we'll promote a manager, and then you have an IT mess because he works 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day and does programming instead of managing. So it's been a history of promoting good experts saying they're managers when they've never been trained as managers and they don't even know what it is. So we send them to management training where it's not training, it's education or, whatever, where they hear good concepts and they look at PowerPoints and take notes. And then they say, okay, I'm already named the manager, I got the training. But they actually do not change their behavior. And they do not realize what are the skills that are necessary to be a good manager, which has nothing to do with expertise in any field. So if you're a good manager, you come from sales, you can become a factory manager, you can become a hotel manager, because management is management is management. It's not linked to the field. So that has not been promoted in the past and now becomes obvious. Because coaching, you can coach an IT person, you can coach a financial person, et cetera, et cetera. Coaching is coaching is coaching. So coaching is a meta profession. Management is a meta profession.
It is.
It needs to be seen that way. And that was not, really underlined in the past. And it's becoming obvious today.
I mean, it is like management. I think it has an exaggerated expertise-based approach, which it was also the comfortable environment, which allowed some managers to stay in their zone. I mean, I was myself doing the same. When I was promoted as a manager, I was still the best sales and trainer. Although I was managing trainers, but I was doing this because of my comfort zone. The environment allowed me. Now, what's happening right now is I think this year brought a lot of speed. And some organizations or managers or teams realize, well, we can't continue anymore because the world is changing with another pace. So it's I think the moment also, if I would give Elena another perspective, the moment to give up on control freakness and actually realize that over controlling people is not the way to go.
It limits them.
It limits.
And today, the revolution is coming from the bottom up. In other words, everybody working from home or wherever is saying, I don't need all this shit. I can do better by myself.
Right.
And so the need is evaporating. It's not like there's a need for managers to change. Controlling managers are useless,
Yeah.
and they're starting to feel useless. And in a way, we could say if it goes to an extreme, management will disappear. But there may be a need to coach systems and networks and individuals and so on, so they can self-develop for themselves. It's
Yeah.
not management in the old style anymore. So it becomes the need for coaching managers or manager coaches.
Yeah.
Which actually is the equivalent of what we called real delegation in the past. In other words, managers who trusted people to do it the right way and would follow up on them and give some hints and advice, but they would not be hands-on.
Yeah.
So delegating management is probably the closest to coaching.
Yeah. And if you're working into this with this delegating mindset, then you actually become a manager, which is the strategic dimension, it's not an operational one.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you will just stay on the operational level. And I believe that the role of a manager is not to stay on the same level with their people solving everyday problems doing firefighting, but is rather create a space, delegate, so they can climb up on the ladder and then pull the people up. So everybody develops. Otherwise, it's like we're saying the mushroom management. You keep them in the dark, and then you give them light how much you want, and then keep them again in the dark. And I think this is not.
And then you hope they grow.
Exactly.
But in a way, this is completely in keeping with a systemic approach, because systemic approaches have the big picture but know how to intervene locally.
Yeah.
But it's also called complexity management.
Right.
In other words, it's much more strategic management. If you become systemic, all this comes with it. So to develop systemic coaches, actually develop strategic managers that are less hands-on and start, looking at things in a longer perspective. So there's a lot of things that come together here in the work we do, developing systemic coaches.
I want to ask you here, Alain, can you share an example of, maybe not necessarily name the client, but at least what happened internally in terms of developing this managers and the coaching culture? We have a few, but can you give an overview of what happened in a company where someone, CEO or whatever, decided we want to develop that to put it on a practical side, not on a theoretical side, and say,
well, different experiences we have, in other words, is open training and then internal training. And there's a number of experiences of open training where a CEO decides to come in a group with other people. Now, it may raise, issues of confidentiality and so on, but none of this was really a problem. He was quite transparent. And he came with his financial manager, I think an operational manager or back office manager, or, and I think there was in the same promotion another person from the same organization by accident, a few levels lower. It didn't raise any issue. And so they did the whole program. And when, obviously, as they were developing, they were going back to their executive team and sort of, applying things collectively. So it's much more useful than coming alone, because it becomes a network that goes back and has immediate influence. In another organization, actually, we did a lot of work coaching them in teams and so on and so forth in developing. And then the CEO says, I need to understand how you think, how you become strategic. This is important for my job. I see how you accompany me to open perspectives, and I need to integrate this. I'd like to do the fundamentals, but I can't. In an open training, because the international PR system will say, no way, you're a public figure, you can't, and so on. So I said, okay, let's do it internally. And the CEO, and there's a good selection process for 7 people from the executive team that could commit, and then 15 others, actually 25 people, including the CEO. and we did a full training, and it changed everything that was going on at the top of the company. And then we did another group with another 25, including the CEO again, who says, well, they deserve that I'm here, because I need to be with them during this development, just like the first 25. So in a way, when you take 50 people and imagine they each manage another 10, this influences 500 people in the top of the company. So it did affect everything that was happening in meetings, the way they work together, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the training is very intensive, and it developed a huge community of people that continue coaching each other and so on, years later. They work differently. It's become a habit.
I think this is actually what I'm hearing. One of the points that the CEO, or the DNA, if I would say, of the organization, the boss, decides to open up, decides to work, decides to become vulnerable and be part of the process, not delegate to it. And then people, I think, will embrace it in a different way. I had a similar experience with even working just on the first phase, as you described, just with team coaching with the management team, and seeing the commitment of the management team, and then the CEO coming there and actually being exposed, and working with the team. There was a difference, at least in the mindset, a little bit in the mindset. Now, of course, there needs to be a skill set that needs to be developed. So the mindset is the first step, but you also need the skill set on this one. Now, we have another question from Nelu. Thank you, Nelu, for contributing here. And I'd like to say hello to other coaches, clients, and participants that I had. Hi, Arseni. Nelu asks the following questions. What have you learned recently from a young coach? How are you keeping yourself up to date in this dynamic environment to stay away of the risk of becoming an old school coach?
Well, it's hard for me to say. The day people will tell me, you look like you have, I don't know, Alzheimer and whatever, and you're repeating yourself, and they'll run away from me because, I'll imagine, okay, I'm kind of outdated. Depends what you call old school or young coach and whatnot. Now, it's a good question, but personally, my approach is to constantly improve. I'm a slow learner. I've been doing the fundamentals now for about 15 years as a training program for coaches. It's completely changed. Every year I tweak it a little bit, I improve it a little bit, etc. So today it's absolutely different from what it was even 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years. And it's much more performing. Now, if I say 10 years ago, I was 60. Now, for most people, they talk to somebody who's 60 and he's supposed to be completely outdated. Now we can push it back and say, no, I'm 70, I'm completely outdated. And I hope we'll push it back someday and say, I'm 80, I'm completely outdated. But so long as I keep searching on how to improve, it's constant improvement. Now, my point of view is coaching is more of an art than anything else. And a good artist, like a violinist or a piano player or whatever, starts becoming good when he's 80. Okay? He starts becoming good. And there's no secret about it. It's because, well, he's got to be playing and playing and playing and playing and playing. If he stops playing, then he doesn't improve. In other words, a constant improvement is through constant work and practice and practice and practice and practice. Now, an excellent piano player practices 8 hours a day. I know one that ends her days with bloody fingers. She's played so much, and she puts tapes on her fingers, and she's an international artist. Okay, now there's no secret to it. It means you've got to work, and that's what I do, what I try to do. And with every client, I try to change a little thing here, a little thing there, and gradually it improves. But I may be becoming an old fogey. You tell me when you're tired of it and move elsewhere.
I mean, I personally also don't see myself going down, but rather going up with every. because it's so dynamic. The coaching, it's so dynamic as a profession. And of course, I look at it as a profession, not like a job. I don't think you can do it. And it constantly amazes me how it develops. It's completely emerging and it's practicing. So every hour, every moment, every client is giving me some food for thought. So I don't see
Yeah.
any plateau from this
Yeah.
point of view, at least in a systemic coaching, in looking in a patterns. Because my
No.
experience is that looking for patterns, it's a mental shift, fitness. It's mental fitness. You
Yeah.
you have to stay awake all the time. It's not
Yeah.
like, old school problem solving. I'm asking this question,
Yeah.
then the next one, and then I'm waiting, and then snoring there.
Now,
That's
in question is, how do I learn from young coaches?
yeah,
Most of the time, I must admit, I don't. I learn from my clients.
yeah,
Okay, young coaches sometimes think they know the whole world and they don't have any 2 years experience, and they already want to train other coaches and become mentors and this and
yeah,
that, and they have never had any clients and they haven't developed. So it's purely intellectual, and their knowledge is monkey see, monkey
yeah,
do, and things like this.
yeah,
So to be very clear, I have learned most of everything in my career
yeah,
from clients, from international clients, intelligent clients, really winners.
yeah,
And that has been a great, great benefit. But they're the
yeah,
ones who taught me most of everything I know.
yeah, yeah. And then if I'm thinking also at the mindset, so the moment I'm not judging my clients but respecting them as they are, then I discover their intelligence, and
Mm,
I get to see them, the brilliance that they have. The moment, this is what it's a completely complete shift for me. If I'm thinking to other roles or professions that I had, and this is, I think it's important. It's also learning from clients is much more important. Now, here's another question from Arseny from Russia. And Arseny is asking us, dear speakers, how individual coaching differs from team coaching?
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked about it in a way with the
Yeah,
illustration in the beginning. If
yeah,
I coach an individual team player,
yeah,
he's individually on the court, and we're
yeah,
imagining, now if I coach a team, well, it's a basketball team. Now the internal dialogue of an individual player is something, and the
yeah,
internal dialogue of a team is all the interfacing in terms of passing resources and really collaborating. So it's a different level of complexity.
yeah,
But the basic word in this, as far as the coach is concerned, is coaching. In other words, if you're not a good coach, becoming a team coach or an individual coach, you're not going to be a good coach.
yeah,
The same thing if you're a systemic coach, it becomes before team or before individual.
yeah,
In other words, coaching individuals in a systemic way is totally different than
yeah,
coaching individuals in a non-systemic way.
yeah,
So there's different levels of complexity that needs to be understood and mainly practiced, because once you practice it, uh, in other words, make it real
yeah,
in your relationships with an individual or a team, and with yourself, because you're often, as a systemic coach,
yeah,
you're part of the client's problem. So
yeah,
you use this. So there's a lot of specific skills here that are concerned, which kind of brings us to the
yeah,
issue of how to train systemic
yeah.
managers, systemic coaches, and so on in those skills.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was about that what was about to ask you right now, because we talked about, becoming. The question is, how do we become,
yeah.
and what is the difference? I mean, we and actually you created a school which is Metasystem Coaching School, as you can see the logo also on our broadcast there. But the question is, it's a systemic fundamentals course actually, or school, if we put it in ensemble with everything else. And I would say, what are the principles and what are actually the key, even let's say warning
Mhm. But yeah,
indicators about someone
yeah,
willing to go to a school, because
yeah.
it's not 1 day or 2 days. I mean, I was when I was attending, it was 8 days, and it's tens of hours of practice.
It's 9 days now.
Yeah, it's 9 days
But
now.
I can give a picture again. In other words, when people talk about schools, they think about education,
Yeah,
they think about
traditional.
high school, they think even training today, they think about corporate training, etc. Now, the way I conceive what I would call the learning architecture to become a coach is really important. And the closest we could say is actually in this learning adventure, I am an instructor. An
Yeah,
instructor, almost we could say a GI instructor, like will yell in your face and tell you to do push-ups. And the image is almost precise. In other words, I conceive of the coach learning architecture, a question of learning skills and developing muscles. So it's imagining like you step in an exercise room and I'll tell you do this for 10 minutes and this for 5 minutes and listen to the instructions and don't do something else. Don't waste time around the coffee machines. You're not here to make friends. You're here to build muscles.
yeah,
Okay, so it's really operational practice, 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 practice. To give an idea, people practice together more than 85% of the
really.
training. And it goes over 200 hours, of training, of practice between the participants, where as instructors we're not present. You need to practice, 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 and it's done on the phone between sessions, and it's up to 2 hours a day.
Yeah,
I shouldn't even say up to. It is required to do the 2 hours a day.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so it is highly an instructor model.
yeah,
It's muscle building model. You
yeah,
need to be in this and understand the directions and do the directions. And it is actually in a collective learning and environment. In other words, I create a learning community where each participant becomes each other's, I don't know, machine, in other words. So there's a client and a coach, they practice, then they brief, they practice, they debrief, they practice, they debrief, and so on. The idea there is to develop new behaviors that are sometimes completely counterintuitive and practice them so much that they become normal.
normal.
In other
Yeah,
words, it's rewiring, it's neuroplasticity.
yeah,
It's rewiring your reactions, your natural reactions.
yeah,
So it has nothing to do with what most people call training.
yeah.
It's not about going to a nice place and eating well and making friends and joking around and so on.
And having slides.
No way.
Yeah,
Now, the result is
yeah,
when you come out, you don't say, I don't know how to do it. You've been doing it for months, 2 hours a day, and you don't want to stop.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And it seeps into everything in your life. So you change the way you are with your friends, with your wife, with your partner,
yeah.
with your team, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
It has measurable
Yeah,
effects. It is totally practical.
yeah, yeah.
Now,
Actually,
this may sound scary, but the result is huge.
yeah, yeah.
Okay?
I mean, one of the reasons I was asking you is also because there is at least one person who that I know. At least I'm looking on the list. That was my client, coaching client, and then he went on to learning coaching fundamentals with you later on. And then this is something that we're saying because we want to also announce this here. There are some editions of this coaching school that we have, and there is one virtual, online, virtual actually, live virtual edition that we're starting in this year in November. There is another one face to face in Romania on January. The
Yeah,
main question
very much.
is,
Yeah,
yeah. So the
February
main
6th.
idea is if you want, so if anyone wants to enroll, because I had this conversation, is not like a normal training, but it's actually requiring energy and commitment to do it and practice. The
Yeah,
main outcome is getting the skill set, getting the
yeah.
practice. Is not intellectual, is not reading books, it's not creating essays, it's having the habit of doing it. And I realized when I did it that it's kind of automatic.
And then it's facing your patterns. A lot
Yeah,
of people, for instance, come and they're real hot, and within a month, they're looking for excuses for not doing it.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people, their patterns. They're
Yeah.
excited about something, starting something new they never finish.
Exactly. It's like
So
up and
your
on.
patterns are going to show.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
people start slow and get more and more into it and finish, really,
Yeah.
and so on. People go up and down.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also looking at your patterns. It's
Mm-hmm.
interactive with the others. So it's showing your, social patterns, how you're going to work the market, how you sell, how you
Yeah.
answer the phone, how you don't. Some people are really active. Some people are just receptive. Some are even passive. They don't even receive. And this really shows during the whole training, and people are kind of facing their patterns and saying, what do I do about it? So
Mm-hmm.
it's highly engaging. It's not, a touristic show where you're in a
Exactly.
bus and you're looking at the view go by and saying, wow, you actually have to go out there and sweat.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so I think that's really important to know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Watch what you ask for. You may just get it, but you're going to have to work.
Yeah. Yeah. So my idea was also for anyone looking as a manager to become a manager coach and to go into a coaching school. A coaching school is life changing. Of course, there are different ways of doing. Now, the systemic coaching school that I was part of, and I'm right now part of it with you, is even more life changing because it's pattern changing. Now, Alain, I would take. There are two other questions here, and I would like to take at least one of them. And this one is from Elena saying, what means a good coach? How is it measured? How can we identify that the coach is good for our purpose? So I'm assuming asking as a client, but it's an
Well, if
assumption.
it's for our purpose as a client, sometimes the client doesn't really know what a coach is.
Yeah,
A client's job is to focus on achieving their goal.
yeah,
The coach accompanies. Now, a client's job is not to become a selector of good coaches with, criteria for
exactly.
a job, etc. You're not into recruiting. It's a shift of focus. You need
Yeah,
to, as a client. Now, what is a good coach? For me, the answer is simple. It's somebody that can regularly, consistently display a number of coach-specific skills. And skills is not intellectuals, it's behaviors. And the
yeah.
ICF has a list of 11 skills. They
Mm-hmm.
reduce to 8 with different levels of proficiency in those skills. And they have markers, they're measurable, or there's
Yeah,
testing on those skills. So, I mean, why reinvent the wheel? I think that is very clear. So,
yeah,
it's not an intellectual approach, it's not knowledge. It's how you respond to a situation immediately because you've had the practice in that type of behavioral
yeah,
response.
yeah,
It's highly linguistic in my frame of
yeah,
reference.
yeah,
In other words, you listen to the client, and the words you use need to be precise for a given purpose. So there's a lot of linguistic practice, and that is measurable. I can hear a coach say two sentences, and I can almost say, okay, you know, because it is really, really precise. There's
yeah,
patterns in linguistics that show the patterns that people have in their lives.
yeah, yeah,
So it's pattern recognition.
yeah. Now, I mean, one personal experience here from my, from my side, my coach side is that um, I coached a client who was actually she was selecting among different coaches, and my first tendency was to start explaining, and then I stopped, and then I coach her, just ask her, okay, what she wants, and so on. So I have no idea if she's going to choose me or not, but actually I was focused there on serving the person
Yeah.
and not selling myself. And I think this is, in a way, what's a good coach. When a coach is really truly helping you, accompanying you there, maybe showing you some patterns, or at least, showing you the mirror, and then you realize, how a coach is
Yeah.
good.
When somebody asks me, well, why should I need a coach? I say, you don't need a coach. You need to achieve your goals.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
exactly.
If you don't have goals and you don't want to achieve them, nobody needs anything, actually. And there's no such thing as, you have to buy so many hours of coaching in your life or in a week or this or that. You don't need coaching. You need to eat. You need to breathe.
Exactly.
You can live your whole life without coaching. Now, I hope you
Exactly.
do achieve your goals.
Exactly.
Now, some people, see and come to, difficulties in achieving their goals, and they seek for help. Well, you may need a lawyer, you may need a doctor, it depends on what.
Yeah.
But a coach, in certain ways, can accompany people to achieve their goals.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's the most important thing. Start with a goal. Start with something you want to achieve. Yeah. We have two more questions. I don't know if you can take both of them, but anyway, I will read them both, and then let's see how we can answer. One.
5 minutes we've got, right?
I'm sorry.
5 minutes.
Yeah, in principle, we have 5 minutes. I mean, we could stay a little bit over an hour if you can, and if other people can. So we're not going to cut short the streaming after 1 hour. Okay. And so here, one question is from a guest. He or she didn't identify. Where are coaching tactics and psychological approach overlapping?
In a way, if you're formal about it, everything overlaps, including I don't know, your nutritional habits and astrology and your culture and so on. So everything overlaps all the time. The problem is not to cut things into precise little separate fields and then say, I'm purist about this, and if it's not in my pure little field, etc. Now, a different question is when, is it coaching and when is it psychology?
Yeah.
And there, my response is very practical. In other words, if a client comes to somebody looking for a psychologist, he better find a psychologist. If he comes to somebody looking for a coach, he better find a professional coach. Okay? Now, coaching is not linked to the subject the client brings.
Right. Exactly.
No matter the subject. If I am a completely competent coach, I will be a coach because the client came to a coach.
Right.
Now, if the client comes to me and say, I'm looking for a psychologist, no matter the subject, I will say, sorry, I'm not a certified psychologist. It's not my profession. Go find a psychologist, and maybe, if I have an address, I'll give them. In other words, you need to be very clear that it's not the content that defines the coaching. Now, you could come as a coach to a limit. In other words, somebody comes to coaching and says, I want to work on my depressive state. If you don't feel comfortable in terms of your skills to accompany the person, say, I'm not comfortable in my skills, and maybe you need some vitamins, like it's known that if you have low, I don't know, this or that, you may have feelings of depression. You may, consult a doctor, you may consult a psychologist, you may even consult whatever. But I don't feel confident enough in coaching to accompany what you're talking about. So you need to be kind of clear about yourself. But I don't think somebody out of the coaching profession can define the limits of the coaching profession.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Good. Here is another question here, which is from Livia. Is it very much in trend, the agile coaching? What do you think about it?
Well, I hear about it. I have the impression it's mostly in an engineering and IT environment. I highly suspect it, like ISO procedures and so on. They talked about ISO processes, but it was procedures. I highly suspect agile coaching to be a procedural approach, for engineers to solve issues in a certain way, or IT people. In other words, 0 or 1 thinking, and so on and so forth. That's just my, point of view from the outside. I did not train in the thing, and so on. Now, day in and day out, there is this coaching and that coaching, and relational intelligence coaching, and this. Okay, Uh, my real question is, do they use the word coaching by talking about coaching skills that are, displayed linguistic competency as defined by the ICF? I'm in an ICF
Yeah.
kind of frame of reference.
Yeah.
Now, it's highly restrained, but it is the largest coaching association in the world. It is the first
Great.
that was created in 1995 or whatever, etc. So,
Yeah.
okay, now there's references coming out of
Yeah.
the woodwork every day. I'm not going to be competent in every one of them. It's not really my
Yeah.
concern.
It is. Florin. Yeah. Thank you. I know Florin. So from what I've been exposed to, seems like agile coaching is linked with processes and procedures. Now, on the other hand, if I'm thinking on what's the profession of the coach, I mean ICF, International Coach Federation, actually they have pretty much clearly defined exactly what the profession is and how can you work with it. And if I'm remembering right now the latest research on coaching, 2019,
Mm-hmm.
because I like to come back to a little bit to this one, to the coaching training. More and more managers feel the need, and this is a big change compared to 2016 research, that they want to become certified, belong to the federation,
Yeah,
respect or abide the ethics,
yeah.
code of ethics, and so on. So this is interesting, and I think it's good
Now,
that.
politically, I don't know if it's real or not, but my understanding is the ICF is going to separate branches,
Yeah, yeah,
and there's going to be, I'm a manager coach and
yeah,
certification for manager coaches,
yeah,
external coaches, maybe internal coaches. In other words, they're going to split the certification process
yeah,
to recognize this,
yeah,
because it's becoming more and more of a managerial, I'd say, feather in your hat. If on your CV
yeah,
you do have a formal training as a coach, a
yeah,
real coach, um, according to the ICF, real being the real ICF.
mm-hmm,
Um,
yeah,
it does bring, extra recognition. It is work, and it's like passing any other kind of, professional training.
right,
So for managers,
yeah,
for salespeople, for internal coaches, for HRs.
yeah,
So there may be, everything is put in the same bag so far, but there is a possible development for the ICF in the future in that
mm-hmm,
direction.
yeah,
Now, I don't know if I'm, divulging political secrets, if it's out yet, but I heard about it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing that we're at least spreading the news about this, and because I do believe that coaching, it's on one hand, it is a profession in itself. It is also an art.
It's a
Uh,
set of skills.
yeah, because it's a set of skills, and I think it can be also linked with what managing people means in this period of time. I mean, it's
Yeah.
correlated with the younger generations.
Yeah,
Uh,
it applies to everything. It applies to being a much better parent. It
yeah,
applies to being a much better spouse. It
yeah,
applies to being a better human being. Actually, it's human communication skills.
yeah, yeah,
It's different ways to react and change your patterns when you're interacting with other people. So,
yeah, yeah,
in a way, it's profoundly systemic. So
exactly.
it's a self-development approach that applies to every. It's a meta profession,
Yeah.
so it applies to everything you do.
Actually, it is. Is sometimes we hear that I'm this type of coach or that type of coach, but actually, coaching, it's coaching as a practice.
Yeah,
It could be marketing, titles or marketing strategies
yeah.
to be in a direction or another. Now, what is fundamental, I think, is the DNA of the coaching practice. Like we have the systemic, and we share the systemic approach in coaching and the pattern recognition, which is unique. But this is applying also to all other areas. I mean, I've applied in
Yeah.
different parts of.
It's a meta approach. So
Yeah,
you could be I don't know, systemic coach and use TA or whatever.
yeah,
But actually, my point of view on coaching also, people say I'm a coach. They're actually part of a movement. In other words, most people could say, I don't know, I'm a yoga coach or nutritionist coach or whatever. And their understanding is completely different from the ICF definition of coaching. What they're saying is, I want to get out of the big, industrial machine and have a corporate job, etc. I want to be my own employer. I want to manage my own time. I want to serve other people in a developmental area. So it could be a sports coach, it could be, but it's for, but it could be a kung fu coach or whatever. So it means I have a vision on how I want to lead my life and serve my clients in their development. I want to be in a network of other people that work like me, but I don't want to be a boss or an employee, and so on. And I want probably to have multiple jobs. In other words, I'm doing this and this and this. I don't only have one type of profession. So it's also multiple profession people. And the world is going towards that gradually. In other words, most jobs created in the States are self-created jobs, self-employed people. By large, it's over 50 or 60%, and it's becoming a worldwide movement. And these people, a lot of them in different ways, are identifying themselves, if they're in service to other people, as a form of coaching. So it's a millennial job in a way.
And it is. I mean, we're over 4. Just I want to, as a host of this, want to let you know that we're still going for a while. So if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in. If you need to leave, you're okay. If you want to leave, I want to say this, that I think the future is actually here with the way we're looking at the jobs and the way we're working, because it could be that in the next 3 to 6 months or a year there might be some changes, big changes in the way in the workforce. Now the question is, are people prepared for that? Now we look at the North America, US, which seems to be more dynamic and creating jobs. Europe seems to be it seems to be a bit more slow in the process of adapting. But there are different regions of the world where there are different speeds on that. Now, what I see is that I think in the future, it's one of my anticipations, is we need to be more and more flexible from all points of view, including the idea of a job, which is not necessarily working 9 to 5 up to 65 years old and then you get your retirement. But rather, perhaps tomorrow you realize you're becoming a project-based manager, or you need to find your projects in your company. Like I'm having clients that have already moved to that, and managers or employees that are freaking out because they realize, oh my God, I need to show that I'm valuable and I need to find a job. So from this point of view, working with a coaching mindset, I think it gives you the speed of thought and reaction and to quickly figure out what's happening. So it gets you out of being stuck.
But in a way, I mean, nobody's ever prepared for change. I mean, the preparation for this change, I mean, Zoom's been around for years. All the techniques have been around for years. People don't jump on it. When they're obliged to, well, they adapt. It's called survival. So in a way, I think a lot of things about the future are obviously rather obvious, but people are going to resist as long as possible until they have to. So thank you, COVID, because it's in a way accelerating a lot of things that may not be so bad. People like to see like a crisis and hope it'll be over. I see it more like a turning point that is, accelerating to a new future. And it's good to, grab it anyways, because who knows, what the next virus will be, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things that, are being accelerated by this by this COVID business. I think it's really interesting to take it as a fact of life. What does it mean for our future together? And what do we need to adapt and how and so on?
Good. So I just want to ask if there is any other question that we'll be happy to take them, and to remind you that because I want to come back to the question, Nelu's question about resources and reading about this. Now, on my end, I would say one resource would be go to a coaching school. But then there are articles. I mean, you have articles on your website about that. But is there any book or resource that you would recommend for a starter
I mean, I have a
into
lot of books I
systemic?
recommend. There's about 25 that I wrote,
Yeah,
and,
that's very much.
and about 6 this year.
Yeah,
Some will be translated to Romanian gradually. There's 2 in the pipe. I don't know when they'll come out.
yeah,
Uh, but some are also translated. But I mean, a lot are available through Amazon Books if you like paper, or Kindle if you don't.
yeah,
And look up everywhere is look up Alain Cardon MCC.
yeah,
You add MCC, and on YouTube there'll be this video. I hope soon, as soon
yeah,
as we finish it.
yeah,
I already have over 30, 40 videos in English and equally in French if you speak French. There's demos and so on. So there's Kindle, YouTube, and I would say LinkedIn. I write articles
yeah,
on there on a regular basis. My Facebook is saturated, so I'm not, if you can slip in when there's a space, maybe I'll check you.
yeah,
But but I'm close to 5,000 all the time. So
yeah, yeah. And this is
and then there's the website we talked about,
right.
Metasysteme-Coaching. That's for me. But there's other resources. I mean,
Okay, so I'm typing in the metasystemecoaching.eu.
yeah, EU in English.
Yeah,
There's an RO one, but it's not very good because it's not very active and it's kind of outdated. And there's a French one if you read French. So I
yeah,
regularly update the French and English one.
yeah.
The
Mhm.
Romanian one is kind of, except for dates of what I do in Romania,
Yeah,
the calendar, the agenda.
yeah,
Most of the rest is kind of stale, I would say.
yeah,
Getting
yeah.
old.
I mean, this is one thing that I also want to share, that you're having, for those of you who don't know that yet. Metasystem School and Alain is having workshops in Romania and the coaching school. This year, you already have the fall edition of the Romanian-based coaching
Fundamentals, yeah. We
fundamentals.
started in the classroom and we
Yeah,
turned online because of travel
yeah,
restrictions. But what I do in Bucharest is, in classroom, and
yeah,
then we're starting some online
yeah,
together.
yeah,
With the idea that it can also be more international. I'm doing one online for Buenos Aires
mm,
in Spain and so on. So there's other online options
yeah,
at different time zones. For Buenos Aires, we'll all start at 2 in the
mm,
afternoon in France and finish at 11. So we adapt here and there. But obviously, more and more things are, like
yeah,
we said, is distributed systems. So we'll do more and more distributed type of offers.
yeah,
I like it in the classroom too. I mean, like
mhm,
everybody, we need to, see and kiss and hug and so on. On this, there's an anecdote, as a matter of fact, in
yeah,
terms of statistics. There's been some kind of deconfinement in France, before summer until after summer, and now it's getting reconfined. There's been an upsurge in the sales of prophylactics by more than 15%
ah,
during that during that deconfinement phase. People after 3 months just could not take anymore. And we can imagine a lot of them as singles and young people and so on. I mean, so there's going to be seasonal kids and so on, depending on the previous confinement, deconfinement, etc. There's going to be masses of uh, rhythms in our lives, in our collective lives. It may not be the only thing that
yeah,
COVID does to us.
yeah, it's like a COVID generation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The COVID boom kids.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it became like a brand name, seriously, with COVID managers and COVID era.
COVID babies.
Okay, good. So Thank you very much. Thank you, Alain, for being here. Thank you to all of
Thank you.
you
Good night.
for attending this session. Some of you stayed even beyond the hour. I'd like to say hello also to people that I can barely see some of the names here because I know you are a lot here. But thank you very much. Just to let you know, we're going to be get this recording and share it with you. And we're also going to put it online, so it will be available. So basically, we're not going to send this because it's going to be 2 gigabytes of file, but it will be online on Alain's website, on my website. In a way,
on my YouTube channel and so on.
Yeah, we'll let you know on that. And again, don't forget, if those of you who know about our work and Alain's work, spread the joy to others. If you think there are people that could be benefiting or are interested about workshops or about becoming managers, coaches, I think it could be a good thing. So thank you very much. Be well, stay sane,
stay
mentally.
Safe. Oh. And hope to see you soon.
Yeah, for those of you, face-to-face beer. Join the Facebook groups, or at least follow Alain when he's announcing he's coming to Romania for a beer or something. So thank you very much.
Often after work, there's a 6 o'clock beer and meat and so on in different places.
Yeah,
it used to be Gambrinus, but now it's kind of closed. So.
Yeah.
But I think we'll aim for being in Romania in December. In November, it's kind of shot, but we'll see in December.
Okay, I'm looking forward also to see you there.
Yes, me too.
So, thank you, Alain.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.